Hi, I'm Ian Blackburn with Wine Cloud and Learn About Wine, and I'm sitting next to my friend Carroll Kemp from Red Car Winery. This is our very first repeat visit. Mr. Kemp has been very supportive of Learn About Wine and Wine Cloud, and if you take a look at our oldest videos, you'll see a great old video with Carroll where we're tasting a bunch of different wines, and so it's great to have you back, Carroll.
Well, thank you, Ian. It's always good to visit old friends and come back down here to the Molino Street Lofts, where I spent some really, really wonderful time and wonderful years as we were starting really the Red Car brand, which is now everything up on the Sonoma coast, but Los Angeles is our home.
And you have had tremendous success. This is a small artisan brand that Carroll started how many years ago now?
Well, I started it 12 years ago with my good friend Mark Estrin to express ourselves creatively. To be frank, that's how it started, and it has really become something that has grown and achieved way more than I ever thought was possible, and it's been a wonderful ride all along with friends. The wine business, as you know, is all about friendships and conviviality and enjoying yourself. It's a lifestyle as much as it is a business. It's been a wonderful trip.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when you started Red Car, you were working in kind of the Hollywood world, right?
I was. I spent about 15 years of my life working in Hollywood as an agent and as a producer.
And you got this hankering to start a wine brand. You made some nice wines. They got some nice support. You got some momentum going. And here we are. Now you're living in wine country.
I live almost on the Sonoma coast. It's a little bit too cold. The grapes love it cold, but the children don't necessarily.
Produce nice grapes, but maybe frigid children.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But Sonoma's a great place. It's a wonderful place to raise a family, and it's absolutely, if you're making Pinot Noir, which is our primary focus at Red Car, I feel like it's the best place in California to grow the style of Pinot that we make, which is something that really truly tries to bring the vineyard into the glass with nothing in between. So if you translate that into winemaking, it's completely non-interventionist, and what that means is we don't add anything to our wines, ever. You can see the mark of the vintage very clearly. You can see the mark of the vineyard very clearly if it's a single vineyard wine. And it's something that really, for me, has the most excitement. The wine business in California is very, very young compared to other regions of the world, so we're still having a process of discovery.
Yeah.
There's a sense of pioneerism out on the coast, a sense of adventure, which is wonderful to be a part of.
Now, Sonoma Coast, for those of you that don't know, is basically the western face of Sonoma. But you also are an advocate for defining that a little bit further, and you obviously pick some vineyard locations because they're a little more specific to their terroir or their characteristic of Sonoma Coast. What do you look for in Sonoma Coast? Well,
what makes the Sonoma Coast special is this big refrigerator we have called the Pacific Ocean. It always is there. The water temperature varies only slightly. It doesn't matter if it's summer or winter. And so it has a very constant cooling effect via the fog and just wind influence coming off the cold waters. And so for Pinot Noir and for Chardonnay and other acid-driven varietals, it never lets the heat reach the point where it can begin to blow off the aromatics. It also keeps the skins at the right amount of thickness so you don't get overly tannic Pinot Noirs. And something that I feel for Pinot Noir is really it should be an ethereal experience. You should be able to taste from the beginning of your palate to the end of your palate. It's something that should have a reverberation and not just come on into your mouth and one big blast. It's something that as you have glass after glass and as you hold it in your mouth for a longer period of time, it should have different expressions.
The press have been very supportive of Red Car in not only receiving good scores, but constantly reviewing the wines, which is, for a small brand, it's important. We've got two Pinot Noirs to talk about today. The Red Car Pinot Noir, which is a blend of a couple different of your vineyards and represents kind of a value option. And quite honestly, it is a great value option, so we're going to feature it today. And then for a more special occasion wine, we've got Carroll's Heaven and Earth Pinot Noir, which has got a beautiful vineyard picture. I have a feeling that's the spot.
That's the vineyard. That's it. That vineyard was planted for us 9 years ago.
Wow.
So I had the opportunity to select all of the rootstock and all of the clones and be part of the farming from the very, very beginning. And when you're able to do that, it makes a huge difference. It also gives you a lot of continuity, so I can follow that vineyard, or your customers can follow this vineyard from vintage to vintage to vintage, and that's it's a thrill if someone's really into wine to be able to do that. It certainly is a thrill for me.
Let's talk about 2010, Sonoma Coast from Red Car. 2010 was apparently the coolest vintage on record.
Coldest vintage on record in Sonoma County.
And honestly, that benefits Pinot Noir pretty well. Pinot doesn't like heat, so we got some beautiful aromatics here, wonderful structure, and this wine might be too good, to be honest. I mean, it's delivering a tremendous wine at its price point. It's 700 cases?
Yeah, it was a little over 700 cases. And one of our goals, our goal for every one of our wines is to deliver more than the price says. We want to build a long-term relationship with our customers, and we feel like that's the best way of doing it. A wine that's not a single vineyard wine is meant to properly reveal the vintage and properly reveal the area. And I think this wine does that very, very well. It's probably the best of the Sonoma Coast Appalachian wines that we've made.
I think it's fantastic, and I agree with Carroll. I think it's a tremendous offer. And if you check out the price point here, you're going to get a great bottle of wine for not a lot of money with a great story. You're going to be very happy no matter what your drinking level is with this bottle of wine. Now we're going to talk about Heaven and Earth, which is a vineyard designate and a wine that a couple of years ago received one of the top scores probably ever for a Pinot Noir in
Wine Spectator.
Hard to argue with that big score. Wine Spectator, was it 97 points?
Yeah, the 07 vintage.
I got to taste the 2010 today for the first time. It's unique, and then when I smell it, you get this really pretty, elegant, finesse, pure red fruit nose. Kind of borderlines into a floral accent. I think you made a mention of kind of like a redwood forest.
Well, one of the sort of telltale signs of the Sonoma Coast is it's where the redwoods, the old growth and now second growth redwood trees are. And they have a very definite smell. One of the components of a redwood tree is that they grow 600, 700, 800 feet tall, but their roots can't push water up that far. So the tops of the trees have to drink from the fog.
No way, I did not know that.
And that's why they're only on the coast, because all the fog is there all the time.
So
cool. Then the fog begins to drip, drip, drip everywhere, and it creates this certain aroma of kind of almost wet pine needle blended with tangerine oil.
That is a beautiful description, and I want you to get lost in this bottle of wine with me, because I think that's what you need to do. You need to pour this in a glass, have a special moment. I think it's great to have both the Red Car, and then something a little more special. It's priced perfectly for what you're going to get. Thank you for sharing and revisiting us with the Red Car story. I hope a couple more years we'll do this again, or maybe even sooner, as your story continues to get better and better, and the wines just are truly special. And I know that we've got some great vintages coming into the future, so I know the future's bright.
Thank you, Ian. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, buddy.
Salute.
Thanks, man.